Hello, I'm Amy Flatten. I'm Director of International Affairs for the APS, and I'm here to talk to you today about APS as a welcoming global hub. A lot of you may have heard John Bagger, the APS CEO, use this term throughout the annual leadership meeting, and you may have some questions, and I'm here to help. So I'll be able to give you a little bit of history on how this came about, and also why are we doing it? What is it exactly? How are we going to go about doing it? And what's the plan? What's the roadmap to make all of this good stuff happen? And what do we have to look forward to? So let me give you a little history. In 2017, the APS CEO convened about a dozen leaders from across the APS from within the United States and outside of the United States to form a task force on expanding international engagement that was chaired by John Bagger, who was at that time director of Triumph in Canada. And they worked for about a year and a half to understand how APS could better serve its international members as well as physicists worldwide. And they reached out to stakeholders across the planet. And in addition to that, they conducted a survey of about 10,000 APS members. About 3,000 of those members lived outside of the United States. They put together a report and recommendations that were given to the APS Council and were adopted in November of 2018. And that report is full of a lot of good stuff, and I hope you'll read it, but I'm going to pull out two key points. Their primary recommendation was that APS expand its offerings across all of the society's programs, not just having a little hub of international programs within the international office. The other thing that they recommended was that APS serve as a global hub. And why? Interestingly, when they sent out that survey, we got a really strong response from the international members. And when asked, what is your reason for belonging to the APS? The respondents said, regardless of nationality, they rated being part of a larger physics community as the primary reason they wanted to belong to APS. And we also noted from the survey that physicists outside the United States will belong to their own national physical society, and they'll also belong to APS. That gives us the opportunity to serve as a global hub, a place for the world's physics community. And what do we mean by welcoming global hub? There can be a lot of misunderstandings when you hear that phrase. And one thing we want to emphasize is by global hub, we don't presume to be the world's physical society. Instead, we want to offer a welcoming community for the world's physicists. In particular, we want an opportunity for all physicists, regardless of race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, to be able to be part of the APS. And we want an opportunity for physicists of diverse levels of achievement and prosperity to, through the APS, build and strengthen relationships within the global physics community. And it also includes expanded partnerships with our sister national physical societies and international physics organizations as well. And why are we doing this? Well, of course, APS values inclusiveness and diversity. And we also believe that diverse participation in APS and all of its aspects strengthens the society. And importantly, we believe it underpins our mission to advance and diffuse the knowledge of physics for the benefit of humanity. An important aspect of this strategy is that it recognizes that physics across the globe advances physics in the US. Likewise, physics in the US advances physics beyond US borders, and international collaboration advances physics everywhere, advances physics worldwide. And how are we going to do this? One of the things to recognize is this isn't a new strategy, but an evolution of what we're already doing. And in fact, APS already reflects the international nature of physics. And what do I mean by that? Nearly a quarter of APS members live outside of the United States. And now we must ensure that all physicists can participate in APS and break down any barriers to doing so. Also, nearly a third of March meeting participants come from outside of the United States. And now through our virtual offerings, we can extend the ability to participate in the March meeting to physicists worldwide. Likewise, over 2/3 of the journal articles that are published in APS journals come from outside of the United States. And so often we hear from those authors, what does APS do for physicists in my country? We need to answer that question and help them understand the programs and services that are available to them and their colleagues outside of the United States. And likewise, we need to ensure that those offerings are of interest and relevance to those communities. And this all sounds great, but what's the plan? How do we pragmatically go about that? We need a roadmap. So how do we get the roadmap? We have a subgroup of the APS Advisory Committee, the APS Committee on International Scientific Affairs, that is working on this development. The roadmap will include near, mid, and long-term goals for implementation. We recognize we can't do everything at once. And more importantly, it'll identify those difficult actions, any internal actions or any other actions that we need to undertake to implement those goals. And of course, in creating this roadmap, we're reaching out to all parts of the APS, and we're awfully close to this. We're reaching out to advisors outside of the APS as well. So we have a draft roadmap, and in the course of our outreach, we're hearing some common themes. We need to better communicate. What does the APS offer? We need to offer opportunities to convene for physicists at all levels. We need to include a diversity of physicists and integrate them into the APS and into the units and into leadership positions and ensure that we're serving the diversity of their interests. So as I mentioned, we're asking for a little help from outside experts to serve as external reviewers. We're so close to this, we need some objective perspectives to help us understand, do these recommendations that we think are good, do they believe that they'll benefit physics and the physics community? How do they think that this strategy will be perceived by physicists in the US and outside of the US? Does the roadmap demonstrate the appropriate respect and sensitivity to all parts of the physics community? And how would they advise us to communicate this strategy? So we have the draft, and where do we go from here? We're finalizing the collection of feedback from the external reviewers. We're finalizing the roadmap, and in 2022, we're beginning the implementation. We already have a plan to convene physics society leaders to discuss our common interests and shared concerns. We're looking at meeting and membership models that will break down the barriers to participating in APS, and that's an important thing for us to do. We're developing a communication strategy to convey APS as a welcoming global hub and our interest in serving physicists worldwide. And we're also, and we've begun doing this, we're expanding many of our US-centric programs to reach an international audience and ensure their relevance and accessibility to them. And we believe we can do more. We also believe we can do more together, and we hope you'll join us. So I want to thank you for joining me today and listening to this video, and we hope that you'll contact us. Please feel free to reach out to the APS Office of International Affairs at the email shown, international@aps.org. Thank you.